Because Apex refuses to give us a wall run legend, I just came up with one myself, had an incredible concept artist illustrate it, and then presented it to my friends and a Respawn developer for feedback. Apex Legends started out as a Titanfall Battle Royale, which meant that in early playtests, wall running and double jumping were the standard movement set for every character. But it was decided that giving characters individual traversal methods or completely different abilities would make for a more interesting and polished BR experience. So I can accept that not all legends have wall running and double jumping, but that we haven't gotten a specific legend with this movement available to them is unacceptable to me. So I came up with Zentra, a legend with an ultra fluent movement set. Almost as fluent as my transition to today's sponsor, Buff. Buff is an app that lets you earn free rewards simply by playing your favorite games, like Apex Legends or Valorant, and they recently even added Minecraft. It's really simple. You download Buff for free, like 5 million others already did, let Buff run in the background, you play the game, earn Buff points and exchange those for game keys, gift cards or even gaming hardware. And they pay for it by showing ads and people signing up for their premium model. Buff is also based on the Overworld platform, which is officially supported and approved by the game publishers. Buff recently went through a redesign that I do think looks better and is easier on the eyes, and can now automatically capture highlights, which you can then edit and share. If all this sounds interesting to you, then sign up to Buff today with my personal link in the description or pinned comment. If you want to see all the legends Boomrazle, Lyric, Macro and me came up with this time around, and what Brian, the Respawn developer, had to say about them, Macro will upload a video with all of them in it. Once that's up, I will link to it in the description. There will also be a link to videos about my first movement legend, which includes footage of a fully working game prototype. Let's quickly talk about Zentra's design and backstory before I get to the abilities. The name Zentra means absolutely nothing, I just thought it sounded dope. The backstory of him would be that he's the son of Gates, the faction leader of the 6-4 from Titanfall 2. In my mind, he would have a military background, and due to his mother, a fascination with pilot technology. And then slowly earned himself the respect and self-confidence while serving to start rocking some more fashion-influenced gear. Most of his design clues and ideas were put together by me in this mood board, with a techwear-inspired look at the core. I then commissioned Pune to do concept art and illustrate the finished design. I will link to her Twitter and website in the description. She does absolutely amazing art and it was a pleasure to work with her. She also gave me the idea for Zentra's ultimate, which nicely leads me into his abilities. His passive would simply be a double jump. I would want you to be able to have your gun out during that double jump. You still get mid-air inaccuracy, but this way it wouldn't just be a worse Valkyrie passive. A further distinction from that would be that his double jump fully maintains all momentum. Valkyrie's passive will always slow you down, even when hitting it very briefly. Zentra's double jump would always carry on all your momentum, meaning using it off a gravity cannon would be really fun, and using it off a jump head would effectively give you a triple jump. I think you would definitely need some kind of balancing mechanic that limits the amount of double jumps that are available back to back. Cause imagine having to fight someone close quarters that can just spam double jump non-stop and then combine it with wall bounces. My idea would be to give you 2 double jumps and indicate their availability with a HUD element. Either like Valkyrie has, or how Pathfinder has a grapple indicator around his crosshair, just showing 2 half circles for the available double jumps. The recharge could be fairly quick, like 5 seconds. It's not about severely punishing you for using the double jump, but preventing that they will be spammed without much thought. In my opinion, this double jump would still not be more powerful than Valkyrie's passive, which lets you traverse much further gaps, scale buildings, and be a much bigger nuisance than a double jumping legend would be. You do get your weapons with the double jump, but in the grand scheme of all the situations where you need movement like that, I feel like it balances out. To get some real movement power, Zentra would need to activate his tactical, which gives him the ability to wall run. But because wall running by itself is a bit limited, it also overcharges his double jump, so it's no longer limited to just 2 jumps. So you basically get Titanfall movement. There are multiple balancing factors that could be used here. A very basic one would be the duration. I think about 10 seconds is a good ballpark, which means he activates his tactical and can then use Titanfall movement for the next 10 seconds. This allows you to scale a building, escape, or use it during 1 to 2 gunfights. The cooldown would be a further balancing tool, which I think would be good at around 30 seconds, which would bring it in line with Sears or Loba's tactical. And then there is insane depth in how wall running could be implemented and thereby balanced. The wall running that's already in Apex in Shadow Royale is very similar to how wall running in Titanfall 2 was. Here are just some parameters they could tweak. How long do you have to stay in the air before you can wall run on the same wall again, making it easier to pick up wall running for a beginner? How fast is your wall run? How much extra speed do you gain when jumping off a wall? How sharp is the angle when jumping off a wall? How do lurches and thereby tap strafing work together with wall running and double jumping? Etc, etc. And then there are all the advanced wall run methods from Titanfall 2. Do you gain extra speed when you jump off the wall while the wall run is about to end, known as an end boost? Can you force that end boost to happen with a crouch? Can you wall kick? And can you combine a forced end boot with a wall kick into a crouch kick? I mean, there's a reason Bryonatz's Titanfall 2 movement guide is over 14 minutes long. I would like to keep all this detailed tech. I feel like wall running in Apex should be a more skillful and deliberate expression that maintains your momentum and gives more speed compared to what Valkyrie's passive enables, where it is easier to use and way more versatile, but has other drawbacks. Zentra's ultimate is using Titan tech, specifically Ion's tripwires. In Titanfall 2, tripwires are simply explosion devices that deal damage when you get too close to the wires. In my Apex version, you would throw a tripwire core that then places a tripwire cage around itself. Imagine it like a circle of Watson fences. This tripwire cage serves multiple functions, to either protect your team or trap an enemy team. It then of course just signals presence. Hey, our team owns this spot here, which especially in higher ranked and competitive can be something important to communicate to enemy teams. If an enemy walks across the fence, they trigger the 2 connecting wire posts. They explode to stun and slightly damage the enemy in between them. This section of the tripwire cage has now been exploded and no longer provides protection, which is a further distinction to Watson fences. Enemies can of course just shoot the wire post as well and overcome the cage this way. There has to be interplay here, else it's just a stronger fuse ultimate. I would imagine a health pool somewhere between the Watson fence and Newcastle's ultimate. Where it gets really interesting would be when teammates shoot the wire posts. I would want them to then explode into small smoke clouds, way smaller than a Bangalore smoke, so you can trade physical protection against visual protection from certain angles. And if you shoot the tripwire core in the middle, all posts explode into one big smoke cloud, about as big as 2 Bangalore smokes. This way, Zentra's ultimate does not only serve the one purpose of trapping an enemy team, but can also be used defensively, from just signaling that you own a certain spot, all the way to deploying it, immediately shooting the core and using the visual cover to revive a teammate. I feel this ultimate could work well together with his wall running. Either trap an enemy to buy yourself more time and then use wall running to escape, or use wall running to catch up to your own team and protect them. This way Zentra has strong solo potential while also being able to support his team. Quick note about the ultimate, I only came up with it after I talked to Pune and she mentioned the idea of having a Titan based ultimate. This would then also explain why Zentra is wearing a pilot helmet, beyond just wanting to look cool. In my mind, the tripwire cage was manufactured by Rampart, as she also made Valkyrie's jetpack out of her father's old Titan. Zentra's ultimate would be manufactured from old Ion pieces, and to activate it, it needs pilot authentication, so he has to wear a pilot helmet to use his ultimate. I was pretty happy with what I had come up with. But let's now hear from Brian, the Respawn developer, on what he has to say in terms of balancing or how you would have to retool Zentra's kit to make it acceptable in Apex.
I don't want to hear it. I want to live in an imaginary world where there's no reason why Titanfall movement can't.
So, character is dope in the same way. But the main thing is always going to be readability of combat. So, once again, if I can double jump over your head and or I can wall run, even with restrictions, like I don't mind that. It's an interesting idea. There has to be downsides. Because, Valk is already really strong. For lots of reasons, I have so many comments on Valk. This is a completely different conversation, but let's just focus on the jetpack. The idea of the cooldown and the wind up and no weapons and all that stuff. Once again, with intent, the character would be obscenely utterly broken without it, right? So when we introduce quick moving, unpredictable movement, that is why, tap strafing and wall bouncing sometimes to a controller player, it's just this incredible like voodoo, like what the hell is that? How can I not shoot this person? And that's the reality we live in. We have a ton of console players, so we have to understand what our characters are doing. So when you introduce that without walls necessarily, and then when you add in a wall, they can do it even more, where they like double jump, and then you can do crazy double jumps, and like you can increase momentum and go really fast. When you don't have a front line, when you can't understand where the action is happening, when people can appear behind you, above you, left, right, and center, you don't have a through line to understand the combat. And Watson and Caustic and all those characters were created with the specific intent to create front lines. We need a place where there is clearly a defending point, and then other people will try and assault. Not everyone is everywhere all the time flying around me with movement characters, right? All that to say is double jump in and of itself was added to like a jump pad because it had, you're already clearly flying through the air, right? And it was meant to reduce the predictability of your jump, right? So you can like shift. Once again, if you can do it at any time, anywhere, it makes it really hard to shoot you. And if you can shoot while you're doing it, because you can do it anywhere, then you become nearly unstoppable. There are so many skilled players that will obliterate any character that does not have that same ability to move like this. Here's what I would change. The tripwire cage for me is, okay, I'm setting out an area where I'm staying. I'm like, okay, now I'm trying to make sure that our team is here, we're guarding an area, we're preventing people from coming in. And I thought that was really interesting for a high movement character, because I'm like, maybe like Ashe has the trap, right? It's like, okay, I want you to stop moving so I can hunt you down and kill you. That to me makes sense, especially for like a pilot character. But then when we're saying, I don't actually, this ultimate doesn't allow me to be mobile. It literally tells me to stay still. And while thematically it's absolutely accurate, it's really, really cool. I'm like, the ultimate in my head is activate pilot mode. You get wall run, you get double jump. While you're doing those things, you get no gun, period. No gun. But for 60 seconds, whatever the hell, I don't care. You get X amount of time that says you can do pilot shit and you can be awesome. But the verb that we're looking for is, it could be one of two things. It could be escape or it could be chase. But it cannot be obliterate. So you look for the verb, always look for the verb. That ultimate now becomes my tactical. And what's really cool about it is, let's just say I throw one down, but with my highlighted, pilot vision, like that I have as my like passive or whatever, I can activate that from a distance. And if I activate it, smoke. If I shoot it, it goes away, because then it remains consistent, right? So I can set up a trap and like guide someone to the trap and murder them when they get into the area with a tripwire like kind of setup where they won't see the tripwire. Maybe an explosion happens, who knows? Or I can set it off early to distract them and chase somebody down. That idea is really interesting, but you're restricting it and you're making sure that it's not overpowered. Like if you flip it, right? But what everybody wants is ultimate power all the time. Like, why can't I just move like this all the time? You guys have so much momentum and movement and sliding and wall jumping. Like, you have all this stuff already. But it's just a matter of like, where is it appropriate to make it a power spike in a very specific character? Because I could see, final rings or like really tense situations where someone activates this, they get into a crazy position through skill, like really, not just like I Valkyrie fly over there, not just like whatever, like you go pop, 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 and you like memorize the path, and you're like, kick ass, I got up to this crazy spot, and then start sniping people. Like, cool. Like, that is a reward for you for knowing and mastering and kicking ass with your character. but it's not. I can just do it whenever I want, so it becomes the standard play, the only play kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the really cool part, and you can make it really readable, right? Like the jets are going crazy. They might have like electrical eye glow. You know what I mean? Like you could sell it to be like, oh, they're in crazy nonsense mode right now. And yes, they can shoot me, but not while they're running on the wall, right? There's enough drawback there that I'm like, this could work if you make it restricted, and you make it signal to the player that they have, added movement.
I just want. I want.
I know, buddy.
I know.
Care. No, it's cool, man. I feel you. Look, as I said, you're a diehard, and I absolutely support all of your love for this game. I love Titanfall, but Apex is such a different beast. Competitive kind of scene is growing, changing, evolving all the time. I don't envy like where the team has to go with all the like future legends to be like, how do we make sure in the same way like none of this is overpowered but still exciting? Like it is, they're testing stuff. For people who don't know, it's not like we pop out a legend every 3 months. Like it's an incredible process. It takes a long time to get to something that is like, gonna be made. Like you'll see with the next legend, you'll see with everybody else is like, I can't wait for all the comments and thoughts and feedback on that legend too. Because that one was there, I want to say like 3 years ago in early prototype form. Do you know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Like on the shelf, off the shelf, on the shelf, off the shelf to be like, what kit makes sense? How we want to do it? How do we want to, make it better overall? Like I've seen that kit when it was a baby kit, and now it's like, wow, like okay, they really made something out of that character. It's really cool, right? Like it's cool to see that jump. I'm really excited for what they're gonna do with all the upcoming stuff.
I really appreciate the feedback. Round 3, I think I'm gonna beat you finally. My legend is gonna be in the game.
Our goal is to convince Brian that our legend is good enough for the game.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, you guys put in the work to like make compelling legends. It's just there's a lot of baggage and stuff like behind it, right? And but I think these are all compelling and interesting. Like, don't sell yourself short. Like, this is really good stuff because you play the game so much, it, right? Like, you know the things you want to see, and it's really the designer's job to be like, well, this is what our players want. How do we make it work within what we already know exists, what the data says, and our intuition with what's coming up next? Like, it's such a balancing act. It's incredibly difficult, and props to everybody on the Apex team. Like, genuinely, like, they are rock stars, everybody. Anyway, love your faces. Thanks very much for having me, and
thanks, Brian.
You guys.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Brian. You're the best. We'll always have you here. You did hurt Moki's feelings though, just so you know.
I saw the Titanfall character and I'm like, he doesn't have to explain anything. I was like, it's gonna be a problem. I'm sorry. I was like,